everyone and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be a little bit different than my regular videos, and that is partially because it is the first video of my new series, Coffee Analysis. So the series is basically where we sit down with a cup of coffee and discuss issues relevant to our day and age. So if you have any requests for this series, then be sure to let me know down below. I do have a few video ideas for this series, but obviously because I do have pre-filmed content that I'm trying to push out, I'm going to hold off on this series. I just felt an urgency inside of me to actually make this video. It's been drafted for a while, but I actually wrote an essay which sort of inspired this video. This video was already in the works, but doing the essay sort of reignited the spark and the passion I have about this topic. So before I get started with this video, I'm not trying to force my beliefs onto you. I just urge you to take the time to consider your behaviors and mindset as a consumer. I don't think I'm self-righteous. I've had plenty of blunders, plenty of slip-ups. I've only been on this path for around 6 months, but everyone starts somewhere, which is why I do not want this video to come across in a tone of judgment. Except to influencers, they deserve to be judged. They know exactly what they're doing. I don't want to get heated like a minute into the video, but we'll backtrack on that one. Nobody is perfect. I've had quite a few slip-ups in recent months. I only recently found out that Kukai was not as sustainable as they made out to be. That was the only physical shop that I was shopping in. I completely disregarded all other stores because I was like, you know, this code of conduct and policy they're providing is very vague and has no details about whether they're paying a living wage. A minimum wage can mean anything but a living wage. What environments and conditions are the workers in? And you can't really be a sustainable company when you use polyester. And that should have been a red flag for me with Kukai, but I thought, you know, they're advertising to be using recycled polyester, so isn't that better? We'll get into that in a moment. All I'm saying is that I personally think being aware of the issue at hand can contribute positively. Obviously, buying sustainably is an elitist issue. For most of us in the middle class, buying sustainably isn't really an affordable or viable option. My favorite sustainable clothing company is Reformation, and their dresses in Australian currency can go for up to $500. So what I'm saying is there are alternatives, but being aware of the issue at hand for me is the most important thing. Even considering myself someone who's a pretty ethically minded shopper, there are a few things that I'm not going to consider buying secondhand. Things like that for me are underwear. That is something that I won't really go for. I mean, bras are really hard to find that aren't made of polyamide or polyester. There are a few sustainable bra companies, but that's something that's really hard to find, and it's a very targeted market and sort of a niche area to find. So for underwear, something that I do is I look at the fabric composition as being the foreground of deciding my purchase. So by definition, fast fashion is clothing produced extremely quickly to keep up with the latest trends and runway looks. We really have to ask ourselves, why are fast fashion companies selling these clothes at such low prices? So my answer to that is that they sacrifice quality materials, safe working conditions, and do not provide their workers with a decent living wage. So fast fashion is also one of the most polluting industries in the world, with its environmental impacts being comparable to coal mining. In my opinion, the first step to actively make a change is to be aware of the issue at hand. An ideology that plagues our generation is that you have to wear something once and then you can never be seen in again. I wore that dress to a party 2 months ago. I can't be seen in it again. Having an extent of awareness can help you to become more conscious when you are shopping and buy quality over quantity. I think influencers have a huge role and responsibility because essentially they are the people that have fallen into this trap and have been promoting endless consumption, constant hauls. I've been guilty of that. I've definitely posted hauls on this channel. I've shown you what I've got for my birthday, videos like that. But when they are rolling out hauls every single week, we have to ask ourselves, is this necessary and what sort of agenda are they pushing on us? Now that agenda, my friends, is the promotion of hyper-consumerism. Now, hyperconsumerism is definitely something that again plagues our generation. Hyperconsumerism is based on the model of constant production and endless consumption. A fleeting example of this is the new iPhones. So it's gotten to a point where every single time a new iPhone rolls out, people view their old phone as obsolete and then they feel the need to upgrade to a new iPhone model. Now, when you think about this rationally, this is absolutely ludicrous. Who encouraged us that every time a store dropped a new product that we should go rushing in for it? Videos like iPhone unboxings gain so much traction and therefore have so much influence on impressionable minds. We shouldn't be thinking of our mobile phone as obsolete every time a new iPhone comes out. So that's definitely something that I'm looking out for in myself, and I need to be very wary of marketing strategies. Since researching this issue, the content that I consume has definitely changed because, as I said, influencers play a huge part in promoting this cycle. And in my opinion, after companies, they have the most responsibility. And this is a huge problem because some influencers are even aware of the devastating impacts fast fashion and the promotion of hyperconsumption is actually having. I don't want to name names, but a while ago when I embarked on this sustainability journey, I made a post on Instagram about Zara because I'd been doing some research and I found out something that made me choose to never shop at Zara again. And I tagged some of the influencers that shop from Zara and promote them constantly in this story, and only 2 out of about 5 of them saw, but within the next month both of them uploaded Zara hauls. So I was sort of like, that hurts because I know you read it and you choose to still promote something that you know is not ethical and impacts the actual lives of other people. How can you ignore other people's lives being impacted in such a drastic way just so you can post another Zara haul? It absolutely baffles me and it makes me so genuinely upset. How can you sleep at night knowing that you have just influenced the minds of impressionable teenagers, telling them to buy the latest Zara piece when there were children found in the factory living undocumented? But hey, look, it's sparkly. Do you really want to be known as another sellout? Was the free PR really worth it? It absolutely astounds me. So as I said, another massive thing to consider is fabric composition. Now, a lot of people don't actually realize what they're buying. So many of my friends think that silk and polyester is synonymous. When I talk about fabric composition, I'm talking about buying natural fibers. Now, you're probably wondering, why do you say that? Well, thanks for asking. I could give you 100 million reasons why it is so much better to buy natural and renewable materials, but let me just sum it up. So with synthetic and man-made materials comes microplastics. So I'm going to read you an excerpt from British Vogue, which basically puts what I'm trying to say into the best words possible. Now, this article is basically about man-made materials with a focus on polyester. Now, they also touch on swimwear and the best swimwear for the environment. This is nasty for several reasons. Number 1, crude oil is a rapidly depleting natural resource and becomes a source of pollution during extraction and production processes. Number 2, synthetic fibers are not generally biodegradable. Number 3, when synthetic fibers hit water, they release microfibers right back into the environment, whether that's a swimming pool, the ocean, or your washing machine, adding to the microplastic pollution that's accumulating in the food chain and being ingested by marine wildlife as well as ourselves. Even opting for recycled polyester swimwear is problematic. Now, this doesn't just apply to recycled polyester swimwear. Anything that's recycled polyester still has damaging effects on the environment, and I'll get into that. Yes, you can feel good that the swimwear brand is reusing the plastic that has been dredged out of the ocean, but ultimately the product is still made of synthetic fibers. So every time you wear or wash it, the microfiber particles are swimming right back into the system to pollute our environment all over again. So that was just a brief summary of some of the reasons why polyester and synthetic materials are so damaging to our ecosystem. So with this cycle of constant production, inevitably comes with an abundance of tossed clothing. So where does this go, you may ask? So this clothing that is unused and thrown away ends up in landfill or is incinerated, which again releases greenhouse gases. But I know I'm speaking a lot about man-made materials. Truth be told, even cotton isn't safe. I just watched a documentary called The True Cost, and the impacts GMO cotton crops are having on farmers is absolutely devastating. But that's for another video. Another impact of cotton is the use of water it takes. So you could say that it's the better of two evils, but it still has devastating effects. So it's stated to regenerate the environmental effects that you need to wear something at least 30 times. So I just wanted to touch on my previous relationship as a consumer with fashion. So I'm no stranger to this whole cycle. I had a utopian view of the fashion industry. I assumed that everyone was getting paid a decent living wage and the factory conditions were safe for the workers. I didn't take into account any of the factors that affected the environment or people in general. So I guess you could say I was really naive in terms of the fashion industry and also the constant marketing. Something I recently found out, instead of producing clothing collections per season, fast fashion companies are now producing 52 micro collections a year. So that's a new drop of clothing every single week. I previously had the mentality of buying something just because it's reduced or because I could get a promo code for it. So I now invest in timeless quality pieces. So I personally view clothing as an investment. For that reason, something I would never personally buy is neon clothes. So many people are wearing neon green dresses or neon pink dresses, and I personally won't purchase a piece that's like that. Number one, because I think it looks really tacky, but number two, because I know it's something that I wouldn't wear in 10 years. And if it's out of fashion, then all these other people are not going to wear their neon either. So for me, this just goes to show that buying basics over trendy seasonal pieces is a worthwhile investment. Something that I'm carrying through this year is buying less but buying better. Eventually, I would like to have a capsule collection of neutral clothing that I can switch it up with, that I know I will continue to wear for years to come. Now, I know this video has been pretty content heavy and it might be a lot to take in if this is your first introduction to fast fashion and actually learning about the consequences that it has. So I don't want to sit here and preach to you and be a Debbie Downer. So I have compiled a list of some of the actionable measures you can take to improve your relationship with fashion and in general your behaviors and mindset as a consumer. So don't buy into greenwashing. So this is basically fast fashion companies capitalizing on sustainability. Examples of this are H&M's Conscious collection, Zara's Join Life. I think Nasty Gal also released a collection that was a sustainable or eco-friendly collection. For me, any fashion company that advertises themselves as an environmentally friendly or eco line, that rings alarm bells in my head and I'm like, red flag, where do I look? Do they have policies? Are they completely transparent about their workers, the environments they're in, how much they're paying them? It's all about transparency. So my next tip is to decrease well-known fast fashion. So for a little bit of name and shaming, Good On You is a great resource to turn to as you can input the company and search for their sustainability rating. This is recently how I found out that Kukai was not as sustainable as they made out to be. As I had only been exposed to their company's sustainability policy, I wasn't aware that they weren't actually sustainable and it was just another case of greenwashing. I recently used the website Renka Brand, which determines a sustainability rating. A is the highest you can get, F is the lowest rating you can get. I think that means that the company does not communicate anything about how they run their brand, the impact on the environment, the impact on the workers, and there's no transparency. So that was the system I previously used to rate brands, but that told me that Kukai was sustainable, and as we've now found out, Kukai is not sustainable. So I would really recommend using Good On You. A lot of other third-party services that provide you with a ranking of the brand, in my opinion, are far too lenient, so I just stick to Good On You now. So my next tip is to buy locally and not buy clothes that are outsourced, because a lot of these fast fashion companies actually go to low-cost economies to ensure that wages are low. The fast fashion brands also have the ability to choose the manufacturers and suppliers they work with. As I discovered in the documentary The True Cost, these brands have the ability to blackmail companies into producing their clothing for even less, and they do that by threatening to work with another supplier. Another thing is to try and buy your leather goods secondhand, because leather tanneries utilize heavy chemicals to treat the leather. Now this infiltrates into local farming and even drinking water. Western brands are able to source this cheap material while avoiding accountability entirely. A statistic from The True Cost is that in Kapoor, 50 million litres of toxic wastewater are emitted from leather tanneries. So this leads me to my next point. Obviously, taking into account environmental factors, a vegan lifestyle is the most ethical. Now, that's not a viable option for everyone though, especially if you're living under your parents' roof like myself. That being said, another thing that I would like to venture into when I'm older is living a low waste lifestyle and hopefully venturing into zero waste. As I mentioned before, sustainable clothing companies are extremely expensive because they take into account the worker, provide them with a decent living wage, the cost of materials, the farmer, and overall the complete cost of an item. So you could say that if you're buying a clothing piece from one of these companies, it's an investment. You can divide it by price per wear. So let's say you're buying this top and you think you could definitely wear it at least 50 times. So divide it by 50 and that's your price per wear. But as I said, this isn't a feasible option for everyone. So that leads me to the most accessible option, which is thrifting or Depop shopping. So Depop being the most predominantly used and popular platform. You can also buy secondhand clothing from Carousel in Australia, eBay, flea markets, and then of course trusty op shops. So this gives pieces another life and ensures that they don't end up in landfill or incinerated. I thrifted this jumper that I'm wearing right now and it's in super good condition and I paid way less than the recommended retail price. Now thrifting can also be a super fun experience. It's like finding a diamond in the rough. I love going through racks of clothing and finding something that is my size and that looks great. It's fun. So another environmental impact that I've recently become more aware of is through buying through Depop. You do have to be mindful that it is being shipped to you and obviously carbon emissions. So that's something I think about a lot. So to counteract that, I would just try and buy locally. Obviously, try not to thrift things overseas. I use thrift and secondhand shopping synonymously. I don't know whether that's wrong, but let me know if you know. Try your best to buy locally when it comes to shopping on apps like Depop. I try to avoid buying things from overseas, even if they are secondhand, because I like to think of the carbon emissions. I'm not really interested in offsetting carbon emissions for a new top. So I try and buy as locally as possible when using Depop. So an argument I hear a lot is that if we stop supporting fast fashion, doesn't that mean that workers are out of jobs? Now my answer to that is yes, it can mean that workers are out of jobs, because if fast fashion brands don't have so much demand and if people aren't buying their clothes, then they might have to shut down. A big example of that was Forever 21. They shut down. The quality of their clothes was gradually decreasing and people were noticing, and subsequently Forever 21 went under. For some of you, this might not be the most realistic option, but in my opinion, the solution to this is more of a democratic society. So this means imposing regulations like carbon tax for corporations and ensuring workers are being paid a decent living wage. Now, I just want to reiterate that corporations have much greater power than individuals, but if we stop supporting them, we're taking back our power as the people and ultimately not supporting a capitalistic society. What this model of constant production and endless consumption is promoting is an oligarchy and ultimately neoliberalism. Capitalism expects infinite growth, but the GDP doesn't take into account the actual workers who are producing these clothes in sweatshops, who are not earning a decent living wage and face being injured or killed. And if that sounds dramatic to you, then look up the Rana Plaza in India. We need to take into account the farmers growing these contaminated crops. People are not another endless, boundless commodity. The GDP doesn't even encompass the actual commodities like water and the land used to produce these clothes. So the final thing you can do to reduce your impact on the environment, if you own synthetic clothes like most of us do, you can purchase something like a Guppy bag. You put your clothes that are made of synthetic materials into this bag and it filters out all of the microfibers. It does this by using a microfilter. Now for me, there are two benefits of this. Number one, your microplastics are not entering waterways or being consumed by marine life. Number two, it acts as a visual reminder to limit your purchase of synthetic materials. So I hope you have enjoyed this video. I am very passionate, but obviously as I only embarked on this journey around 6 months ago, I still have a lot to learn, and I'm very aware of that. I have a sustainable fashion reading list, so I'll make my way through that and provide any updates. If you did enjoy this video, then please subscribe to my channel so that you can continue with me on this journey. If you have any constructive criticism that you would like to share, it is welcomed, and I'd love to engage with you in a discussion in the comments. Also, feel free to share this with your favorite influencers that you feel need to educate themselves about the impacts of fast fashion. And I hope for some of you that this video can be a starting point to educate yourselves about the impacts that fast fashion has on the environment and the actual lives it impacts. If you're interested in any of the resources that I have mentioned throughout this video, they will be linked in the description. And again, I hope you have enjoyed this video, and hopefully I will see you in my next one.